This is Tracy, and today I'm going to be doing Ixalan cards. I'm going to be doing black cards in this video. I've already done white and I've already done blue if you want to check those out. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about these cards. I'm kind of like meh about a lot of the set. Like, I've been looking at it and I haven't been finding like a lot of cards that I'm like, I really need to talk about this card, because I only talk about like crazy notable cards that I really want to draw attention to. There are some pretty sweet things, I mean, like in every set, but I don't know, this set kind of underwhelms me, I think, for the most part. And normally I'm a huge fan of like black and white. Those are kind of like my go-to colors and I love them together. But for some reason this set I'm kind of unimpressed by that color combination, and just even the colors in and of themselves. I really like blue in this set, which surprises me. Okay, cool, let's get into it. So the first card I want to talk about is Boneyard Parley. It's 7 mana. You exile up to 5 target creature cards from graveyards. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. You put all cards from the pile of your choice onto the battlefield, and the rest go back to their graveyards. This is a really interesting card. I feel like I haven't seen anything like this. I think it's very unique. And I think it's really sweet. I mean, having the opportunity to get cards back, it kind of reminds me of a little bit of like Fact or Fiction, if that makes sense, just of like separating things into 2 piles and you get ones, but they're from graveyards. Very good late game card. I think you can definitely get some really solid creatures with this. So overall, I think it's a really interesting card. Definitely a late game bomb. I really like this card. Okay, then we have Dire Fleet Ravinder. This card is super interesting, but I really like it. So it's 5 mana for a 4/4 with Menace and Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, each player loses a third of his or her life rounded up. Now, just looking at like that ability, I mean, yes, it does hit you too, but you know, you do have some lifelink options, especially if you're doing that like vampire themed deck. I think this would be really sweet with a like life gain vampire-esque kind of tribal deck where you're gaining a little bit of life, so this doesn't hurt you as much. And then on top of that, after it does its thing, it's a 5 mana 4/4 with Menace and Death Touch. Very, very sweet creature on top of that. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this guy. I think he's a really, really good late game bomb. Yeah. Okay, and then the next card I want to talk about is Bloodcrazed Paladin. I don't know why I want to call this pirate, just because there's so many pirates in this set. I'm like, Bloodcrazed Pirate. It's not. Okay, this card is super interesting. It's a 2 mana 1/1 with flash. Like, I already like that. I think it's really interesting. I like that black is kind of breaking the kind of mechanics, like, or not breaking the mechanics, but like they're doing interesting things that I feel like you don't typically assume flash to be in black. I feel like it's more of a blue thing, which I think makes this card really interesting. ADTBs with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature that died this turn. Very, very solid card. Black, you'll notice I'm going to talk about a lot of removal cards. This black has a ton of access to removal, which makes me really happy because I'm removal happy like all of the time when I play sealed and when I draft. So yeah, I think this card is very sweet. I think it has a potential to be a really good late game card. Don't be fooled by the 2 mana cost card. I think you can easily cast this at late stages of the game and have a really potentially large creature for your opponent to deal with. And it's just casually got flash. Overall, I think this card is incredible. I really like it. Okay, next up we have Sanctum Seeker. Let me just say, I love cards like this. When allies were a thing, I loved the whole like lose life, gain life. I think it's a really interesting type of mechanic and I really like it. Guys, it's a 3 mana 3/4. Just looking at that, it's a really nice body in and of itself. Whenever a vampire you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1. Even if you don't have that many vampires on the board, you can just swing with this dude and still get that trigger. I love the fact that it's attacks. Straight up, again, I think vampires are just setting up to be a really great deck type. I just think, I don't know, I just really like it. I'm a huge fan, because I think a lot of times what can happen, if this makes sense, where a lot of people will talk about like the types of decks and that like will go on when you're drafting or when you're playing sealed, and I think a lot of times for newer players, like identifying a lot of like those synergies can be really difficult, like Delirium, for example, like trying to make sure you have enough cards that have Delirium, whatever. But when you do something like super simple, like build vampires and just build that, it's a little bit easier, I think, for newer players like who want to just play like very aggressive strategies. Overall, I'm a huge fan of this card. Again, I really like that archetype, and I think it's going to be very solid in this format. And my assumption is it will be played in Standard as well. Probably, I guess. The next card is Fathom Fleet Captain. Okay, it's a 2-mana 2/1 with Menace. I mean, I already like this. I love Menace as a mechanic. I just think it's really sweet. Whenever it attacks, if you control another non-token pirate, you may pay 2 to create a 2/2 pirate with Menace. Really digging this. I'm not too sure how I feel about pirates yet, like as a whole in this set, as a deck, but I think this card is really sweet. I think even on its own, if you don't have that many pirates, I think a 2-mana 2/1 with Menace is still pretty good, but I do think you are going to want to look out if you're running this card for definitely more pirates. Make sure they're non-token though, just so you can create more dudes. I think this card is definitely very fair. Paying 2 mana whenever it attacks to get a token is very, very fair. 2 mana for 2 power, that's really good. And it's also got Menace, which is awesome. So yeah. The next card is Bishop of the Bloodstained. This card reminds me a lot of, and I forgot about it, but the card in Elves, that's like the 3-mana creature, 2 or 3 mana creature. It ETBs, target opponent loses life for the amount of elves you control. It's the black-green elf. I can't think of what it's called right now. Reminds me of this card a lot. Again, I think vampires are going to be really sweet. It's 5 mana for a 3/3. It ETBs, target opponent loses 1 life for each vampire you control. A very simple, very, very good card. Yeah, oh, Shaman of the Pack, that's what it was called. I don't know how I forgot about that card. Yeah, very good. Okay, then we have Deathless Ancient. So it is a 6-mana 4/4 flyer. You tap 3 untapped vampires you control to return it from your graveyard to your hand. Now, I really like this. I do, and I think I like it a lot too because of the amount of, like, you've got like some token gen vampires, which I think is really sweet about this because, you know, you could tap down like your 1/1s and then you could bring this back. It's just a pretty nice body. I think this is a really solid uncommon. Even if you're not doing that many vampires, a 6-mana 4/4 flyer isn't the worst thing ever, so I do think this card is pretty sweet. Cool removal cards. Black has so many removal cards. It makes me so happy. And I'm not even talking about all of them. Walk the Plank. Card's incredible. It's a 2-mana kill spell, sorcery speed, double black. Super simple, super easy. Very great card. And if you're playing against, you know, people who are playing Merfolk, don't worry. You have more removal cards. So, okay. Then we have Contract Killing. I have to say I'm not a huge fan of these whole treasure tokens that are coming up. I haven't really been talking about them at all, and I'm just not into it. I just don't know how it's going to play out. I'm not a whole fan of like sacking it to draw a card. I much prefer like, I don't remember what the mechanic was called, but where you make a token and then you sack it to draw a card. I much prefer that over getting access to more mana. I think too, one of the reasons why I don't like that so much is because I find that this set, there's not many things that cost a lot of mana. It's not a mana expensive set very much. There's a lot of really solid cards that are like 3-4 mana, things like that. It's not to say that there aren't anything that's like more mana, but it's a 5 mana destroy target creature spell. It is a little bit much. It's 5 mana for something, but it is destroy any target creature. You create these artifact tokens where you sack it. I'm not in love with this card. You'll find when you play with cards like this, you're not going to be in love with all these removal cards, but you do need to play them because you do need removal and it's very important. Again, I'm just not a huge fan of this whole treasure artifact thing. We'll kind of see like how it plays out when the set actually comes out, but I'm not really a huge fan of it. I don't think it's a great mechanic, but this is also a removal spell and you kind of need those, so yeah. Okay, then we have, I completely forgot that I was talking about this card. I always think it's funny when, I use Mythic Spoiler, and I always think it's interesting when cards that come out, like people write comments on them, and I always think it's interesting when like I pick cards that only have like 1 comment or like 2 comments, and I'm like, wow, I guess like no one really likes this card, but I think it's really sweet, which I just think is interesting. We have Fathom Fleet Cutthroat. Try saying that like 12 times fast. Okay. It's a 4 mana 3/3 ADTBs, destroy target creature an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. This, I'm thinking of this card with, forgot the name of it, but it's that white card where it's like you deal 2 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. It's a creature that ETBs and essentially destroys something. Straight up, even if you block with like your 1/1 or something like that, your opponent's gonna be like, why are you blocking my 7/7 with your 1/1? Cool, because I'm gonna play this card and kill your creature, which is really fantastic. You get a creature, there's a little bit of graveyard recursion in the set, you can recur your creature later on, and you destroy your creature, and then you're just left with a 3/3. I think this common is very fantastic. I really like creatures who also act as removal as well, so I definitely look out for this card. Okay, Vanquish the Weak. Not too much to say about this. Again, removal is kind of basic, I would say. I do like, though, that this is instant speed, 3 mana. You destroy target creature with power 3 or less. I wouldn't get super hung up on the fact that it says power 3 or less, again, because there's so much in this set for you to hit. There's a lot of really threatening creatures that do have power 3 or less. Again, you find it's not a very mana expensive set. There's a lot of really sweet creatures, so yeah. The card is really, I think, very good. Okay, cool. And then we have, again, this was another card that, like, no one commented on in Mythic Spoiler, but I love it. It's Skymarch Bloodletter. I think this card is just busted. I mean, it's not like the best card ever, but I think it's a really solid common. It's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. I already like that. I love that. I think that's great. ADTBs, target opponent loses when you gain 1. Very, very basic, but again, I think there's just so much fantastic synergy in the vampire deck. Like, I think if you're playing vampires, you want like 2-3 copies of this card because it's a really solid body. After it does its thing, you're left with the flyer, you're left with the 2/2. It's got that sweet evasion aspect to it. Honestly, I'm surprised. I think this does a lot of different things and is a really nice dude for being such little amounts of mana for 3 mana, which I think is really good, so. And the last card we are going to be talking about is Vraska's Contempt. I think this is one of like the first cards that was spoiled in the set, and I immediately knew it was like, this card is going to be a total house. Everyone's going to be playing this card. It's very basic. It's a 4 mana. You exile target creature or planeswalker, you gain 2 life. Card's incredible. Definitely something that you're going to be looking out for. If you are drafting the set, you know, and you're playing black, you totally want this card. If you're playing sealed, definitely something you want to look out for. I just think this card is wholeheartedly very incredible. I would have been honestly totally fine if this didn't even say you gain 2 life. I would have been super happy with like a 4 mana exile target creature planeswalker. Because again, you got the little bit of recursion. You want to make sure your opponent's not bringing anything back. Or even if so, you can get around indestructible or other things like that. And just that little bit of life gain. Also love the fact that it says planeswalker. You are going to see planeswalkers in the set. And sometimes there's really nothing you can do about them. Again, black has so much access to removal, which I just think is amazing. Definitely a reason to check this color out. And yeah. Guys, that was it. That was it for talking about black cards. Overall, I'm very pleased, I would say, in general, by the amount of removal in this set. I do think a lot of the creatures are decently underwhelming. Again, I just find that there's not a lot of, like, big dudes, but I think there's going to be a lot of, like, weenies decks. You know, I think there's going to be a lot of, like, little, like, 1/1 vampire tokens running around, which I love stuff like that. So, we'll kind of see, like, how things play out and what kind of, like, drafting archetypes people are going to be playing into and whatnot, aside from the obvious ones. So, that's it. I will talk to you guys tomorrow when I do red cards. Bye.